Penguin Random House Canada presents Story of Your Mother, written and read by Chantal Braganza. The way I became a writer was that my mother wrote my life for me and told it to me. Jamaica Kincaid. The point, or part of it, is that babies eat manuscripts. They really do. The poem not written because the baby cried, the novel put aside because of a pregnancy, and so on. Babies eat books, but they spit out wads of them that can be taped back together. Ursula K. Le Guin. A baby is born in reverse. Transverse, as the medical literature defines it, or bum-first, as his mother will remind him well into his adult years, and especially after he has children of his own. So painful, and so many hours. For this, or perhaps other reasons, he never lives it down. He grows up the third child of 4, and walks to school most mornings. One day, he will tell his children about the giraffes and cheetahs and other animals he sees on these walks, perhaps because this is what he thinks they are taught about Mombasa, where he grew up. In truth, the roads are lined with concrete block homes and bare of animals, the school segregated by religion and race. He is well into his teens before he sees a giraffe for the first time, and even then it is from a train. He is sent to boarding school in Goa, Western India, from where his family originates. This is at significant expense to his father, who fixes beaten-up instruments, recycles Christmas presents, and bakes cakes for tuition money. It is meant as a gift, a prized education. But the young man hates the 5 a.m. wakings and knuckle beatings and other punishments he still doesn't have language for, so much so that he begs in letters to leave. He threatens to kill himself. When his father relents, the boy heads straight to London to join his older brother, who once endured the same gift himself. The boy is 17. He is fond of flared pants and oil paints and Marvel comics, and is so delirious with this new version of his life that he visits the same pub a block from his flat frequently enough to imagine himself working there. He feels free. Free in a place that once claimed strict ownership of the other places he has lived in and is supposed to be from. 3 years later, his father dies of a stroke. His sister writes from Toronto to deliver the news. A small girl is hit by a car. She is the last of 6 children and born tiny. Perhaps she is hard to see, or simply unused to the cobblestone roads. Her family has moved from a mountain town in western Mexico to a beach resort city where her father hopes to start a practice as a lawyer. She is thrown a few feet by the impact. Her nose is broken and rearranged. Her grandmother sees this from the child's bedroom window, the same one she looks up at to watch her granddaughter jumping up and down on her bed. She rushes out to the child. Years later, when her daughter asks her about her own nose, bent awkwardly in that growth spurt between small childhood and something slightly older, the woman points to her own face, where the break still shows, and tells this story. It's meant to be a shared experience, but the girl understands it as a causal explanation, that wounds and the way they heal are inherited. She also tells stories about water, about the Kwale River, which cleaves the beachside city on its way to the ocean, opaque and still and not fit for swimming, but often used for laundry and bankside gossip. When she was 16, a particularly violent hurricane ripped up houses along the Kwale and emptied their contents into the angry, swollen water. The next morning, she and her sisters ran to the riverbank to watch. Clay shingles, refrigerators, electric fans swirling into the Pacific. The storm hadn't ended yet, and they shouldn't have been there. She should have been afraid. A man delivers chicken for a restaurant chain in the evenings and reports on the size of property lots in the daytimes for the city of Toronto. By day, he's treated with respect, but something happens in the evenings, something not unexpected, but still life-changing in his experience of the world afterwards. He is more aware than ever of his status of not being born to a place, of non-inheritance, of seeking varying levels of either approval or respect from people who can at turns be patronizing, kind, or cruel for reasons that have more to do with their own discomfort with the feelings his presence gives rise to than anything he's actually done. But his mother, brothers, and sisters are living in the same city, together again after nearly a decade in different places across the globe. He has good friends, a job that will allow him a sabbatical to travel. He's delivering chicken, he's saving money. He's headed to Greece in a month, and he can't believe his luck. A young woman, newly 17, starts a job as a server at a beachside restaurant called Las Palomitas. She's headed to university next year, needs the money, and the clientele along the boardwalk simply tip better. For a time, the town's cobblestone streets were known as a hideout for movie stars. Summer Richard Burton could build a pleasure palace for Elizabeth Taylor, or Sylvester Stallone could party in relative peace. The tourists who followed brought cash and spent heavily. Before the town's beaches were segregated by private hotels, men in printed button-ups, cooked vermilion by the sun, would squelch out kissing sounds at her. One evening, one of these lobstermen follows her around the restaurant while she is on shift, sketching her likeness. It's accurate and very beautiful, part tip, part gesture. She will keep the portrait stuffed away in her closet somewhere. 6 months into this venture, a man walks into the bar. He has just flown in from Athens and is hopelessly clueless about this destination because he is not meant to be here. An earlier plan to island hop in Greece was cut short when he met a couple in Mykonos who beckoned him to Puerto Vallarta, a multi-layover, nearly 30-hour trip in the opposite direction. He cannot speak a word of the language, but he tries. 2 years later, she leaves her family and boards a flight to Toronto. After the wedding, after the flight, after the scramble for a place to live, the couple moves into a studio condominium in Port Credit, a micro-suburb by the water of a nearby lake. This mirrors some aspects of their meeting, another beachside town. Another mirror? When money gets tight, they both find side gigs in food service whenever and wherever they can. Once, together, at a hotel restaurant in this lakefront community. He plays the bartender, she works as a server. Guests flock to her. He doesn't know how to make a screwdriver. He is fired in the first week. I don't remember ever asking my parents where it was I came from, or from whom. The answers were relayed to me often and built into the fabric of everyday life. I came home from school. My grandmother made fideos. I spoke a different language then, saw extended family regularly then, was often asked this question at school and asked it of my friends in return. In the 80s and early 90s, Mississauga was only in its teens, and much of its population growth was driven by immigration. In every elementary school classroom, dine-in Pizza Hut, shopping mall corridor, the only majority reflected in these neighborhoods was that most people were, generationally recently, from somewhere. My life reflected no other reality until I left the city to work as a journalist in Toronto. The specific confluence of those three factors, work, journalist, Toronto, changed my environment significantly. Far fewer of the people I came to meet or work with were from somewhere, unless that place was a town, a city, a school. I can tell you this to illustrate how little I knew about the rest of what's called Canada. How, if born elsewhere in the country, I may early on have been more likely to identify myself through a lens of absence, of non-whiteness. I can tell you this to illustrate how lucky I was not to, which is true. But these demographic realities themselves, that we could all be from somewhere, that we were all from somewhere together in a way incongruent with the rest of the country, only demonstrate the work of colonialism and white supremacy in negative relief, in inverse shape. I can tell you this to emphasize that I grew up understanding that race is an empirical fact, yes, but that I had not yet been explicitly encouraged to consider its social and historical grammar. My father is from Kenya, but he's Goan, which means he's Indian. The syntax in that statement. My mother is Mexican. The implied simplicity. I did not have to ask my parents where I was from, but I was asked it often enough to become comfortable answering the question in whichever way suited the context. I can tell you this one day when you haven't asked, precisely because you aren't likely to. I often think about the ways your life may have indirectly answered the question for you already. There are some biological theories that, at times, feel like the right description of what it felt like to carry a child. Not the feeling of being pregnant, not seeing the same curvature of the shell of your ear in your child's. I mean literal cellular invasion. Genetic material that passes from the fetus, through the placenta, into the tissues throughout the body, brain, liver, bones, blood. Cells believed at once to have a protective effect and to be potentially harmful. Some studies have shown fetal cells rush to the site of a heart injury. Others suggest they may play a role in influencing autoimmune disorders. They live on in the body for years after birth, sometimes decades.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?